Yo, what's up, guys? How's it going? So, I wanted to go over kind of a bit of a, how do you say it? It's maybe the most expensive rallies I've even ever tried to attempt to eat. And frankly, yeah, this is probably, I don't recommend anybody try this. I'll just start off by saying that. But so let's get into it a little bit, all right? So I decided to go range wedge. Now, in case you guys are wondering, I've been inquiring, right? Some people are like, all right. Clearly going wedge is a bad idea. And I was like, okay, all right, well, let's just go ahead and try this out. Now, in case anyone's wondering, right, well, what exactly am I getting at? Well, all right, so you know how squad attacks are, right? You don't want to put your front line in as your squad because, well, problem number one is obviously you're going to run into the situation where your front line is going to get hit by the other army. You kind of put yourself in a spot pretty fast, and you can kind of see where I was at that first rally. I didn't do really hardly anything at all. I wasn't I was playing with pretty much nothing in particular on the first march, right? Which all I did was swap my wall heroes after the march, but as you can tell, I started out with the first march right from the get-go. I had absolutely no tier 4 whatsoever, like, concentrated. I didn't have any reinforcements, I didn't have a guild, didn't have... Anyway, the point is, right, is that a lot of the experts that I've come to talk to have all suggested that going a range phalanx is better whenever you're going into a rally trap situation, and that a lot of the time you want to put your squad heroes in the back rather than in the front. So I went ahead and I kind of ended up doing this just as a kind of so like the first rally, right? Obviously I wasn't in wall heroes, so I can tell you for a fact, right? If you don't have your wall heroes and you're not sitting in war gear, there is a significant difference, at least in comparison to the first rally. Like, you can see where that definitely has a sizable difference, right? In terms of how it'll actually perform. You can see that, although it goes by very quickly. Again, I'll go over the reports in detail here in a bit, but, and again, the reason why I bring this up is that if you're gonna rally trap, but for most part, you don't want to do it when you've got like 300 million core might like I do, all right? But well, you definitely don't want to do it like I did, which is that you don't just take one rally. You take not two. You didn't take three. No, you took like 5. Spoiler alert, in case you didn't know, that's what this video is going to be all about today. And yeah, I mean, as you can tell, the situation was pretty not looking pretty good. I kind of like to test and see what the extreme is, and of course, you guys seen me get zeroed before on this channel before. I've always liked to kind of explore with what is going to be good and what isn't. And so I can tell you that wedges, for the most part, I don't think wedges are really that positive after this. After looking back and looking at the reports, and we'll look at them here in a bit. But it's just, after this, I've decided the wedges are really not my thing. Obviously, you can see they filled my prison up. And at this point, I didn't really care about capping. Didn't really have any interest in capping these people, even though that's an option, right? As a rally trap, you can do that. But obviously, 540-ish million might. You're not really a rally trap at that point. So using rally trap methods, that's what we're going to go off with here. So as you can kind of tell, it's starting out, it definitely doesn't look good. 20 million stone. I have lots of gold. There's no end to that. But at this point, you have not one, but one rally, so I swapped gear, and you can see that, obviously then the next march came, and I tried to heal these marches, and they, at first they didn't realize it. They kind of, as you can tell, they're a little ham on these, which is, go figure, right? In both hits, you can see I lost quite a bit. Wasn't terribly good. Obviously, you can go back and pause the frame if you want, but again, I'll show you these reports in detail in just a bit. Again, that was the first two, that came through. And I mean, again, whenever you're getting into these situations, you probably should know right from the start that when they solo you, they already know what your comp is when you're not in anything, and so obviously one of the problems that I have right from the get-go is I'm not changing phalanx, right? Still popping range for wedge, I haven't swapped anything. we're just seeing, how long can I get away with sitting in range trainings, basically. And again, in case anyone's wondering, yeah, I did kick out a couple leaders, and I figured, hey, that gives me the opportunity at least to cap a leader or two, right? And then, of course, I popped my ability, got a little bit of destroyers with whip-de-doo, right? Not a big help in this situation, but again, it goes to show, at this point, I was looking at the report, and some people, they're starting to message me. I got Spartan telling me, oh, they're gonna go Cav, and I'm looking at the rally leads at this point. Up to this point, I already knew the rally leads had Cav gear, so I had assumed at this point that I was safe to stay in range of Wedge, because I was thinking, right, that they were gonna try and counter the counter, meaning that, I was thinking, okay, they're probably gonna send infantry. That's what I would assume they were gonna go in, but without knowing that for certain, I was afraid they were going to go Cav. So at this point, I really don't know what they're going to send. I have no clue what I'm fixing to basically end up eating at this point. But I already know that I'm really low on range, and at this point, it doesn't seem logical to keep going in range. But I was like, all right, screw it. Why not, right? So at this point, you got not one, not two, not three, but you got almost four of them now going. With Photon in the distance, Sarah, and then Kango, it's not looking so good. And you even got T-Zai going at this point. But then you've also got, it looks to be a Nazgul in the distance. So it's not looking really pretty at this point, And so at this point, it's getting pretty worrisome, I know that I'm probably going to get myself zeroed out, and I'm going to take a huge jump in loss. So at this point, I checked to see what they sent, and I counted the first march. What I didn't anticipate was the fact that because I'd stayed in range like I did, which I could have stayed in infantry, I could have easily done that. But as you can tell, of course, as you can tell, it doesn't look really good at all. I mean, it's it's basically a million tier 4 for like a million, tier 2. It's not really great for an exchange. And honestly, yeah, I would have loved this to have been somewhat different. It would have been nicer. But obviously, the next rally, yeah, more or less, I would love to tell you this gets better, but it doesn't. Obviously, the next hit, it's again another, again we're talking mythic champ players here, guys. We're not dealing with any small crowd fish here. This is some pretty heavy duty stuff. Here 400,000, that sucks. And then another 1.1 million or so. So obviously, at this point, it's very clear that this is not going as the plan. And of course, we go to the next hit, and again, more or less the same story as before. But at this point, you'll notice that what happens at this point, right? Because the range is pretty much zipped, you'll notice that now it's somewhat less than before, which is a little weird, right? You can kind of see how that, is just a little strange, right? But mostly in due to the part because it's Drakes, like range versus Drakes, you're probably okay, right? And if you look at the next rally, of course, I ended up capping their leader in this rally. And again, it's, you have to wonder, right? Again, they're packing decent gear, in case you didn't know. All right, and I'll go ahead and really briefly just show you the kind of gear, okay, that these guys are packing, because this was no simple ball game, right? we're talking some pretty heavy duty gear here, okay? But going back to this report, right? There, another 980 some thousand tier 4. It's not pretty. It's just a lot of dead troops. It's not pretty at all. It's really ugly, to say the least. But as you can tell, it hurts to kind of see that, though, because then you can see here I've taken, at this point, because the front line is already as wounded as it is. At this point, I'm just basically, my range front line is non-existent, and so it starts to dip into my fighters and my Drakes. But as you could tell, it was kind of a anybody's guess kind of thing at that point. But that was pretty much another 600,000 dead. So it just keep dwindling from here. It just doesn't get any better, right? And then, of course, another one by Congo. Now, this was like a mythic-ish tier player, so not really that strong in comparison to the other guys. But you can see here he went full Drakes, and once again, more or less the same result as before. Again, packing a full set of Cav Heroes, but because I went ranged like I did, it pretty much countered all of those Drakes, and it did a real number on that. But like as you can tell, there are 110,000 more Cannoneers are dead and 400,000 Sharpshooters are dead. So I wouldn't call it a victory by any means, but it was a good fight. So at the end of the day, all right, all said and done, all right, from start to finish, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then that's more than a man can ask for. For just something that happened within a very short time span. I mean, there was 10 minutes between the next two rallies, 10 minutes between the next two rallies, and one. I mean, they were just crazily timed the way they were. Now, I'm sure some of you guys are probably thinking, like, well, how come you didn't need it? How come you took so many reds? Why are you doing this? Are you freaking crazy? You madman. Look, I understand. I know some of you guys out there are probably going to look at me and think, well, you're just stupid. And I understand that. You're totally, welcome to believe what you want. But at the end of the day, out of 6 rallies, 5 of those were all pure tier 4. That was 5 million tier 4 that was sacrificed trying to go through this front line. And to be honest with you, right, as it says, it's only got 800k across, right? And then 4 mil across. And after it's all said and done, I've only got 600k here and 2.5 million there, but that's really not that bad. I mean, if you really think about it in comparison to what they lost, I don't know. I mean, that's really not too bad. Now, yeah, having that said, obviously taking reds is never really a grand and great thing, but I've always been on the high side on mine. You guys have known this. All right. I've got almost 280 million in research might. I mean, frankly, I didn't even think I was going to get quad rallied, let alone, doubled or tripled or vice versa. I just didn't think it was possible to get rallied that many times in a row, but lo and behold, it is. And so, because of that, I'm back to rebuilding. So I'm back to rebuilding this wonderful grand and great, method of killing players and kind of shredding all the tier 4 that I can in my wake. And so what I'm going to do differently, right? So some things to reflect on. All right. The thing about it is whenever you try to eat like doubles and quads and stuff like that, I can say that without a doubt, with the current composition that I had, it was only 18 million strength out of a 24 million total that you would need. So to begin with, I was at odds with really frankly, just from the start, I didn't really have much of a chance there. But not just to point that out or anything, but like if you look at like where things start to get a little hairy, right? When things are actually kind of going downhill, you can notice that at some point, their troops are basically surviving the hits. All right, you can see here like this, nothing survives, but every hit after that, right? At this point, it starts to slip, but again, you can kind of see where there are some problems in it. There are a few dents here and there, right? And in the case of like this rally, right? The one reason why I'm going to decide against wedges from here on out in the future is that obviously looking at it, I mean, I intentionally put one ranged hero for that front line because essentially they're taking all the damage. And you can see how, like, on the sides, right? The squads on the sides are doing a good chunk of the damage. That's the idea behind the trap in the first place, is you want to put your squad heroes outside of that so that they do all the damage. That's pretty much what you're essentially trying to do, is squish the 2 squads on the sides. And I think they could have achieved that, right? They do essentially just that. But as you can tell, my squads are not really collapsing at any point, so it's really hard to say exactly what could have been done, other than really just more troops, I think, and if anything, right, I think some new compositions will be played with. Obviously, reinforcements are not really such a bad idea. But again, these are things that, looking at it now, all right, this gives me a really good template to kind of look over and see, what is this wedge going to do in situations where you've got different kinds of compositions. I mean, you can see how, here in this case, they've got all their range in the back, and you can see that the range are taking all that damage, but it's not going to make a hell of a difference in the case of, where this wedge is really just pretty much doing a bulk of the effort and has already kind of gone out of its way to pretty much squish that march. So it works out great in this situation, right? But, you look at like where I'm not in counter, and this is the thing, when you're hitting rallies like this back to back and you really don't know exactly what's getting sent at you, it's kind of tricky really when, like here, it's the same troop type, right? Same exact troop type, and it's an imp wedge versus a range wedge. All right, and at this point, right, it's more or less you're kind of dealing with the same exact problem, really. You've got pretty much, you can see the range are doing a ton of damage over on those units out in the back, but they're not they're not doing a bulk of the damage. I mean, that's not what they're intended for. You can see that my squads, which is my cav and my infantry, they're the ones that are squishing those marches, which is what they're exactly intended to do, right? And as you can see there, I mean, I'm not using the front line as a damage producer. That's essentially what the front line's intended to do. And it works just fine in this case with the wedge. However, being that, it is a wedge, I think it could have been a lot different had it been, like in the case of like Photon, right? All right, Photon, being that he did go a full range rally, you'll notice that the numbers are obviously substantially different, right? You kind of have to think, okay, what could have caused this problem, right? Is it because the squads in the back finally collapsed in? Because again, the numbers here are really pretty positive. They're not negative in any way whatsoever, and then it becomes a question of like, well, what went wrong here, and honestly, if you ask me, I think it really boils down to the fact that the strength of the composition just isn't sufficient. I mean, although it did an enormous amount of damage, as you can tell, as you can see that, as these units up here are taking a good chunk of that damage, it's still not doing an immense amount of effort here. I mean, this does exactly what it's intended to do. It just soaks damage. But as you can tell, like, that might be a little bit different had it been in a range phalanx where things might have been just a little bit more spread out. I mean, vice versa, we come back to this rally where I didn't have any wall heroes, right, that were doing any army attack or anything, and this is talking plain Jane and as simple as possible. You can see how, like, even in this case, all right, the first problem that happens is that these frontline units end up becoming, like in this case, that cav wedge was really bad because my cav units at this point are taking a lot of attrition because they're essentially they're soaking all the damage while the range are hitting them, and that is not good. Like, you don't want this situation. This is a bad example of what you don't want to have happen because they're doing, the squads are doing the damage and are getting completely shreked at the same time. It's not a good thing, right? This is kind of this is what not to do. Although, it works, it's really not what you want. So if, I don't know, like, I mean, going back, I would say there will be some changes that I'll make, but ultimately, that is, in a sense, what I kind of had happen to me. Needless to say, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully you learned a thing or two. And again, like I said, I'll play around with this composition and try it again. See what happens if I build it a little bit stronger. But obviously, being the might I was, and the fact that I used a wedge, I mean, obviously you guys can see now what a wedge will do in these kind of situations. But I definitely think we'll try out and see what phalanxes will do for a change, and we'll use that as a way to kind of compare and see how it goes down.